I'm Raymond Arroyo. Welcome to Arroyo Grande. This is an exclusive a lot of you have been asking for, and look, I aim to please. He's an actor whose intense performances have moved audiences for decades. He burst onto screens in The Thin Red Line, and then from The Count of Monte Cristo to The Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel leaves a deep impression on every role he touches. His Sound of Freedom was the breakout hit that made more than $250 million at the box office and shook the industry. And now he's poised to play Jesus again in Mel Gibson's sequel to The Passion. By the way, go subscribe to Arroyo Grande Show right now on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts and turn the notifications on. I don't want you to miss an episode like this one. Jim Caviezel sat down with me to discuss how he's preparing to step into the sandals of the Savior once more, how this will be different for him, and his personal life, his career, and much more. Watch. I want to start with where this acting thing came from.
Probably junior high. I was impersonating everybody that I saw, from Christopher Walken to Eddie Murphy, and it was kind of a knack. And people would say, gosh, you should get into acting, and you'd be around your family and impersonating people and say, that's really good, actually. Yeah. And I was doing a Christmas play at Immaculate Conception School in Mount Vernon, and there was a character named Simeon in the play. And it had a lot of lines. The music teacher was kind of pushing me to do it. So I ended up doing it. And just remember getting to the end of the play, there was a piece in there, the Lord is my shepherd. And I just went into a zone, and people were crying in the audience. And afterwards, people would say you should be an actor, and the nuns were saying you should be a priest. And two things I said: I do not want to be as an actor or a priest. I want to be an NBA basketball player.
But God had other plans.
Yeah, of course.
Tell me about the movie theater incident. You go to see, was it Hoosiers? What was the movie?
That movie was Ghost.
Oh, it was Ghost.
Yeah. Every day I would go and I would chart all my basketball shots and different things like that. And afterwards, I walked down the College Way, and there was a Cinema 5 theater. And I went in and watched Ghost several times. And a presence landed outside the movie theater. I knew it was God. It was 1,000 yards away. I don't know why until I did The Passion. It happened, something similar happened, but it was 1,000 yards away. Your soul has this kind of knowledge. And it came into the theater, and presence came over me, and it was like I was God's only child, that he loved me that much, and I couldn't believe he loved me that much. And it went from love to peace, and then there was a voice, and I heard it, and he said, I'd like you to be an actor, exactly that. Left an indelible mark on my heart.
How old were you?
That was 19.
Wow.
I mean, I was flirting with it now. Around this time, I had gotten my Screen Actors Guild card with the Gus Van Sant movie, and I was a ticket taker, and I faked out the...
My Private Idaho, which I did not know you were in until this week.
Yeah.
I saw the images of it.
Yeah, I was just a ticket taker, but they don't give you the script. They just see if you can... But I pretended that I was Italian, and I faked it. It was a terrible accent. But if you believe when you're speaking and you're convincing, and people go, oh, he must be from Italy, so they believed it, and I got the part until the casting director called me. She says, I'm calling for Jim Caviezel. And I said, yeah, this is me. And it was, no, this is not Jim Caviezel. And I said, oh, yeah, it is. And then she says, you liar.
Oh, because they thought you were Italian.
And I said, no, I was acting, yeah.
Oh, my God.
So anyway, they cast me, and they used me without the Italian accent. And
you shared screen time with Keanu and River Phoenix.
And River, yeah. Spent a little time with them, yeah.
That stunned me when I saw that. Tell me about Beverly Dean, who was your manager, whom we know. In fact, the way we met was through Beverly Dean. Tell me about her. I know she managed your career really up until The Passion.
I met Beverly through a co-management deal with a woman named Bev Cheney. She's the one that saw me in Seattle.
I see.
And she said, young man, I think you're going to be a star. Okay? And she put me in a car with another guy named Brendan Fraser. And we would drive down to auditions together. We flew to audition for General Hospital with Jeannie Francis. Both him and I, neither one of us got it, but...
He's from Washington State as well.
I think he's Canadian at some point, but he went to Cornish Institute, I believe. Huh. So anyway, I came to LA, and Beverly was this woman who did the, she, if you read about her, it's really fascinating, but she worked for ABC as a psychic, and she picked the whole schedule for ABC, and she got blacklisted. And anyway, I was down there, and she could pick talent. Yeah. And she had me taking this young girl to auditions, and it was Reese Witherspoon. So I was kind of a chauffeur for a lot of stars at that time, future stars. And, but she always believed in me, and and I, at some point, I auditioned for Juilliard and got in. And then I really started to believe, I think I can do this. I really think that this is a gift.
But you turned it down. You turned Juilliard down because you got a film gig.
No, they gave me I asked them for a deferment. Now, if Juilliard said no, one or the other, I would have gone to Juilliard. And I did the movie with Kevin Costner to play his little brother.
Wyatt Earp.
But it gave me 16, 20 weeks on a movie where, I was able to put some cash in my pocket, and then I got a full scholarship to Juilliard. And then Juilliard reneged on their agreement, Michael Kahn, head of the school. What it did was I said, if I'm not famous in 4 years, I'm out, I'm done. Right at the tail end there was the thin red line. And when Juilliard reneged on their agreement with me, John Kirby, my acting teacher, and Beverly, both of them were Catholic. We went to Mass together. And it's important because, there's a lot of things that young actors can get involved in. Drugs is just the beginning of it. And, they were going to clubs, and there were the poor guys like me, or guys that had a lot of money that were on Beverly Hills 90210 or those shows. And that was it. So it was 10 years of just, barely getting by. But Juilliard did something to me. It lit a fire. I said, okay, I'm going to be famous in 4 years. So what I would do is I'd get up in the morning, I would go to Mass at 6:30. Got out of 6:30 Mass and went direct to Loyola Marymount University, where I was working out with the basketball players. Because remember, I played. Right. So these guys are working on going to the NBA, and got to play with some phenomenal, great players. But that level of intensity and discipline goes on to you. So first was the spirit, the soul, the Eucharist. Second was the training, physical. And then the third is the mental, which was the acting that I was working on,
How did you meet Terry Malick?
Well, remember, I was going to Mass. So my wife, we married, and she taught me how to do the rosary. Now, I went to Catholic school for many years.
Didn't know how to do it.
They didn't teach us. I didn't even know what the transubstantiation was. I learned that when I was around 30. Obviously, the rosary is powerful because it's through Jesus, through Mary to Jesus. But it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's the Gospels. It's the story. And
that's you're meditating on.
Yeah, you're meditating, but I'm meditating on the Gospels. And also, why am I here? What's the purpose and everything like that? And if you go back to the movie theater, I had a strong premonition that this was that moment. Right now, everything was on it. And I get out of the car and I went, I didn't do my rosary. And I went, okay, that's not going to be a good thing. So I went, boom. I went back and I did the whole rosary, but now about 15 minutes late. And I did that about as fast as I could. I go to the house, knock on the door, and this maid answers the doorbell. And on her neck is a miraculous medal. So I knew, I was like, oh, cool. Because a lot of people there are not, they're kind of uppity, and so, I mean, they are. And So you go in and here she is. And I said, oh, you got a miraculous smell on your neck. And I said, you're Catholic. And she says, no, I'm not Episcopalian. Come on in. So we go in and we're talking about this and that. And I had my wife's grandmother's rosary on me. And that was the rosary I prayed. And I said, here, this is for you. And she couldn't believe I gave it to her. And she starts crying. And then Terry Malick goes in and he goes, honey, what's wrong? Well, it occurs to me this ain't the maid, it's his wife. and there's a rosary in between us, and she's crying. And I said, why'd you do that? I said, I don't know. And she said, well, I lost my rosary that Mother Teresa gave me from a friend of mine, and I prayed that I would get another one. And so it was a miracle.
You've said to me that Terry Malick is your father in film.
Yes.
What did you learn from him? What did you take from him in that first Thin Red Line?
Terry Malick is Babe Ruth is a generational player. Michael Jordan is a generational player. I've worked with 2 generational directors, in my opinion. A lot of good ones, but I would say Mel Gibson and Terry Malick. He's my father in film because here's a man that could have gone by way of the world and done a lot of that. And he seemed to hold on to his scruples, his values. He's still extremely private. And you know what? You really kind of have to be in a lot of ways. You'd like to be an open book. I think you can be, but you got to be an open book to certain people, and you got to keep that circle of trust pretty close.
I don't want to pass by Count of Monte Cristo, which was such a great, beautiful film in many ways, and was a statement of faith, because as you said, it was true to what Dumas wrote, ultimately. But you worked with Richard Harris. What was that like? What effect did he have on you?
He opened up a side of himself, of God. He plays the priest in the movie. And we were going through back and forth on the scene where his death scene, and I said, God saith vengeance, it's mine. And Kevin says, don't say that. And Richard liked that. And so he wrote that and said, Dantes, now your final lesson, do not commit the crime you now serve the sentence for. Remember, God saith vengeance is mine. And I said, and I just looked at him how he did it. And I just gave myself to the scene, and I just lost it. It kind of hit me as a part in your life where I had no God, or I didn't feel like I had a hole in my heart. And it just came out, and he says, it doesn't matter. I said, I'm believing him. He says, it doesn't matter. He believes in you. And wow, it wasn't written that way, It was just, and you're learning a lot kind of on the job. And a great actor like him, when he sees that, those guys have always, at some point said, keep working, or that was very special what we did. In fact, he said, what you and I did, Jim, was absolutely brilliant. If you go down to Malta and F it up like Oliver did, because they did.
Oh,
Oliver died down there, Oliver Reed.
Yeah.
And I was in the bar, no joke, we were in there, and Carrie, the guy goes, yeah, Oliver Reed died right there. And this was like 3 days later after having this scene with Richard. We were in Malta.
Wow.
It was like, he died right, and Richard had just told me this. And then we were working on the Passion, and my hair person had Richard Harris on the phone. And he's like, Jim, how are you doing? How are you guys doing? Because we were getting just pummeled
at that point. Yeah, I want to get to that in a second. Let's go back to the beginning of that story.
Sure.
Mel approaches you, not to play Jesus or in a movie called The Passion. He approaches you about a surfer movie.
Yes.
And you go and meet he and Steve McAvity out here.
Yes.
In Malibu.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a store. It was down on Canaan. It burned down. Well, actually, they're building it back up again. But I was just supposed to meet McAvity, who's Mel's producer. They did Braveheart together. Yeah. And Steve shows up, and he's got a book on Mavericks. It's a big wave. I think Tom Hanks was going to be involved in it somehow, producing or whatever. So I read the script, and I think Kevin Reynolds was going to direct it, who did Monte Cristo with me.
Monte Cristo, yeah.
I'd never surfed before, but I thought I could, probably do pretty good here. But anyway, the script wasn't there yet. I didn't know. Back then, I would read it as is.
Yeah.
I could not. It was the next 10 years that I started learning how to massage it, shape things, something going, okay, it's not there, but there could be something there. I couldn't do it back then. I'd read it. I made some decisions where I can't believe I turned that movie down. How'd you turn it down? I said, well, that script wasn't there when I read it, and eventually did get there with some other actors. You put the right people in and get it there. Well,
So you're meeting with Caviezel.
Steve shows up, and probably 40 minutes into the meeting, Mel Gibson shows up. And Mel is like right here, Steve's here, and I'm there. And we were talking about surfing movies and everything, and then it pivots into Christ movies, Jesus movies. Well, that's not a surfing movie. And it's not Jesus on a surfboard. How's that going to work? And I just went. And now I go back when I'm 19 years old in the movie theater, and I went, oh my God. I mean, I'm not blaspheming God. I'm not taking his name in vain. Yeah. I literally said, oh my God, this is it. And I said, you want me to play Jesus, don't you? And just honest, and he just went, he was smoking a cigarette at the time. He doesn't even smoke anymore, but back then he just went, I thought he almost swallowed it. He went, and he goes, yeah. And he put his head down, yeah. And I said, okay, I'm in. And because of the movie theater, I said, I'm supposed to, I don't need anybody to tell me whether to.
No script, no outline,
no agent,
no nothing.
I didn't ask Beverly, I didn't ask anybody else. I said, I'm in, yes. He called me at home 2 days later, and he goes, you really want to do it? If you do this movie, you may never work in this town again. And I went, what?
What's he talking about?
I mean, no. What I wanted to make was what really happened. So I was okay with that. But I didn't realize, because I really didn't know my faith much at that time. I remember I tell you, at that point, I didn't even know. If you said what transubstantiation was, I didn't know what that word was back then. Even though I went to Catholic school for years, they didn't teach us any of that stuff. Huh. And when I got married, as honored as a Catholic, my wife, when she was in bed and she had something underneath, what are you doing? She had a rosary, I grabbed it and threw it across. We get that out, S-H-E-T, get out of here. Because I thought it was like voodoo stuff. I didn't know it. Don't know anything. But I do now.
Yeah, I can tell. So how did you prepare, though, for this role? I mean, this has got to... There's no more difficult role because you're not dealing with a conflicted character. He's God. He's perfect. There's no obstacles, really, except people, in your case, in the case of the Passion, they're throwing rocks at him, there are people blocking him, but he's perfection. How do you approach that as an actor, practically speaking?
Well, I'll tell you, but, you might not like my answer. Well, the answer is really simple. I had the Bible. I read that. I had, as a Catholic, we have sacraments. All Christians, we have some of the same. We have baptism. The rosary was an important weapon for me because it was the Bible without being able to read it. For example, you have the Annunciation, then the Visitation, then the Nativity, then Simeon, and I'm contemplating. I see the vision in my mind. I see it. And so I was able to go there while I'm you go into kind of a trance when you're filming. And I had to, because of the makeup times were from 2 a.m. till 10, from 10:30 to 4:30, I was friggin' freezing. And every day I went to confession, because he's the Messiah. I can't have any sin on him. Other things that...
You mean you personally couldn't have any sin during that period?
Of course. It was like a temple. To just keep my temple as pure as I can, so that he could come through me, and I would meditate through the sacraments, through the Eucharist. I would receive the Eucharist. So I had Jesus in my body. I had the rosary that I was meditating, because look, I can't take the Bible while I'm up on the Passion holding it. My hands are tied up. And I couldn't count on my fingers anymore because I couldn't feel them. And that was a good thing because this hurt so bad and I was tied, so the shoulder kept...
You separated your shoulders.
I separated the shoulders so I was up there. So what I did was I picked out 11 things. One guy was the Our Father. And then I would just look at 10 things. So Our Father, and then Hail Mary, Hail Mary, Hail Mary. And then I would start with the wedding...
All over again.
All over this. And I would do the entire... the sorrowful mysteries.
That's what you did while you were on the cross.
I was doing that while I was on the cross because the pain was excruciating, right? You can't you had to go somewhere, and he took me somewhere. And I would start to, because we were so cold, they would take you down off the cross. I would go into this cave, and they had a heater, and the wind was just blowing, and they couldn't get me warm enough. And so I would be shaking. Now, look at this. Yeah. When you have a torn shoulder and you're shaking, that hurts so bad. So these heaters, and the wind would come up. And so the heater would be too far away. I'd tell them to move it closer. The wind would die down. It started burning my legs. They had latex.
All over your body's latex.
Yeah, they built. Yeah. Correct. They built because of scourging and everything. So that was the awful part about it. And then again, from lack of sleep is when the infection started in my lungs. And then I had double pneumonia. I was on antibiotics the whole time. And then that's when the AFib started coming. And then the last shot of the movie, I got ripped right in half from that lightning bolt. And then then 2 heart surgeries.
And you think that's what contributed to the heart problems?
100%.
The lightning strike and the hypothermia and the...
Well, that was AFib when I was on the cross. The doctor put the stethoscope on my heart and he turned to Mel. He said he could die because he's listening to fluid in my lungs and he's also listening to a heart that's...
And the hypothermia, when you're going through hypothermia...
But remember this, I'm not getting sleep.
Right, I remember.
Yeah, so from 2 till 10, 8 hours of makeup at the worst parts, because we end up getting, if you ask Christian Tinsley, and this guy's a genius, and literally, he was able to start, we can do it quicker, but I would they made a cross on if you watch the making of it, you'll see, they have a cross, they had a bike seat. Yeah. I would sit on that, hold my hand up here, and hold him, and I slept the whole time, just sitting on that bike seat, I couldn't stay awake. Then I'd go in the chair, and as they were building the beard, because the beard had to be built because of the scourging,
Right.
So they had to lay that in, and it was hand done. It took an hour. I loved it because this man was massaging my face as I was sleeping, and then you'd have someone hold my head, and I would just sleep in the chair.
Well, I remember at the end, I remember being with you at a time in Rome when you would come back after that day, and you were in the full latex, the body, all the scourging, but you couldn't, if they took it off, it would take another 8 hours to reapply. So you slept with it.
Yes.
And I remember you, in the morning, it was burning you, and they couldn't pull it off.
Yes.
It was stuck to your skin.
I had to take a 2 hour after every day. I would go in the shower for 2 hours, and they'd turn up really hot. And I would start drinking tons of water, just drinking water. And in the heat, then I would start to sweat and it would start to separate. And then Christian Tinsley and his assistant would get in hazmat suits in this big, like a regular shower you would see in a locker room. And they'd start peeling it off. And then I had to put this ointment on. So all the rubbing caused the skin to, get infections and get, it just...
And what do you think was the purpose of all of that? Was that to bring you closer to the suffering that he actually went through?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I mean, you couldn't... It took you physically, mentally, spiritually, out all three factors. It was constant torment, and that you're going to fail. Just the fact that, how am I going to learn this Aramaic? I don't have enough time in the day to even learn it. And I'd come home, and I would get home and I would go to the gym and I'd start doing, because I had to make sure that I had kept my leg strength up to be able to hold myself up. All my weight went into one leg. So, years of playing basketball and staying in a defensive stance was really actually critical for this role, because all my weight went into one leg and I'd have to hold it there for, 12 minutes every time they had a mag.
Wow.
Then they'd bring the post in and I'd try to, I'd stand up and they'd have to undo me. And then they'd take a break, and then, because, the makeup, if that falls apart, we lose the day.
You lose the shot.
So they had to keep it, preserve it. And so, if you put that heater too close, it'll destroy
It melts it. It would melt it. There's a moment in the Passion where you're carrying the cross, and it's on screen.
Yeah.
And you stumble with it, and I know you were suffering awful during that shoot, but Mel left a chunk of that in, where you hurt yourself.
Yeah, I bit through my mouth. You'll see when I go down, I come up, you'll see a stream of blood. I bit through my tongue and my cheek.
Oh.
And he's got a high-speed camera on.
Yeah.
So it's just like a slow motion, but really it went like that. And then it got up. But this thing really got
the
screwed.
shoulder separation.
Yeah, that really screwed me up right there. That was like, So now you're going into the crucifixion scenes, and I don't know if I could pull this off because of this.
Yeah.
That hurt.
Extending your arm is
It's just, from that point on, it was always, I had a problem. And, I'm up there and I'm naked, so I can't put a brace on, I can't pull it in.
Do anything.
And what happened was they tied me up. And so when that cross is bending, it would go snap and it would throw that shoulder out. So, the idea that you and I were talking one time, and it forced me into the arms of my God because I had nowhere else to go. I really, it took me back to the movie theater. It took me back to the whole life, which is, I'd like you to be an actor. And
you felt this was the purpose.
I was connected to was the fact that the moment I learned how much he loved me, I wanted to do it for him, because I didn't feel I deserved it.
Yeah.
And none of us really do. But the fact that he loved me like that, he knew who I was, and that was it. That was the whole deal for me.
There was also a lot improvised on this movie. There were moments that were not there. Tell me about the Mary moment, which is such a sweet and beautiful moment, where Jesus and Mary are together, and it's really one of the few light moments in the Passion, but it wasn't originally there.
So it was the very first scene I ever done in Aramaic. And when I came in, Maya's so beautiful, she came over and she started speaking to me in Aramaic. Blah, blah. She goes right into the scene. And I looked at her, and I wasn't used to her voice or anything. We didn't even rehearse it. She went right into it. And we were doing the thing with the chairs and the whole seat,
sitting
and
at the table,
just and then working with her, we were able to find the, kind of the lighter moments of it when you look how, rough this film is. But it was brilliant that Mel put those moments in there to kind of lighten it up. It brought a humanity to it.
Yes, it did.
And then the second part of that was like, okay, I forgot. Oh yeah, we got to do the thing where we're walking away. He's just, so we did it 4 times or whatever. And he goes, can you just do something, kind of, give a connection or whatever. I mean, it's just, well, come here, I'll show you. And he's, and I said, oh, okay. I just looked at it. Okay, go. I walk home down to bed, and it's like, hey, and I was washing my hands, and then went boom right to her face. Oh. Immediately I kissed her. And I was able to do that like that because of how she was when we met. And there was something very endearing about her. And then just that, and then Mel was like, you could hear this.
Meaning that was
That's
good.
it.
That's the one.
That's the one.
Cut.
Yeah.
I love it. Are you excited or worried about being on set with Maya Morgenstern and getting back into that particular toga again? You went through hell on the first movie, Jim.
Yeah. It was okay, though, because it was part of the purpose of why I was born. I take it very seriously. A friend of mine made this for me in Medjugorje. On one side, it's JC. On the other side, it's 33. And I have 5 diamonds on it. And my wife, I had 3 children. It's all of us. It's a family. And on the top is St. Benedict's medal. It's a war against Satan and the forces of evil. And this is a great weapon against evil. I'm not a sheep. I was born to be either a sheepdog that was a wolf, or I'm a converted wolf. But I'm not a sheep, and God is in my heart. And when you say evil, I look at it, because what's in me is greater than that. And I'm a weapon against that evil. And the films that we make are controlling the world's narrative. And the world didn't like this film. And that's a good thing. So we did a good job. And so now I get these bonus years, and I had no idea. At the time, after I was done, it was done. But around 2013 was the beginning. On February 20th, the feast of my son, we were at Disneyland. It was my son's birthday, the feast day of Jacinta Francisco. Yeah. And he came to me and he showed me that, there's another one. And it's coming. And this was in 2013. So you think, oh, okay, well, it's going to be next year. No. It took Mel 15 years, he told me, to get this movie. I came on real quick, but it was kind of like 15 years when I started in 1988 to get me to 2002 when we made it. Yeah. It takes a while to make these things, but it just takes the right time, and only God knows that.
20 years, Jim, for the sequel.
So go
20
back.
years.
But going back, why? Why was it this time? There's a reason for it, and I don't know. But am I scared? Yes. But if I wasn't, I wouldn't want to work with that actor, because you're not ready, and this is a war.
A quick free flow before we go back to Jim Caviezel. In case you haven't been paying attention, suddenly everywhere you look, there are faith-inflected films on streaming, at the Cineplex. Just this past weekend, The King of Kings, an animated feature retelling the story of Jesus, made $19 million in its opening weekend, and it was number 2 overall. The House of David was one of Amazon's most watched series. There was a film about the Virgin Mary on Netflix. There's another coming to screens at the end of the year with Caviezel as Herod, incidentally. Then there's The Chosen, and of course, the most anticipated Jesus film ever, Mel Gibson's Resurrection of the Christ. What amazes me is the industry is always aghast when these films turn up huge audiences and box office. Ye of little faith. As John Irwin, the director, told me on a recent episode, and you should go and catch that episode, the challenge is to have the art match the subject matter. And let's admit it, a lot of what passes for faith-based films has so much cheese in it, you'd swear it were sponsored by Velveeta. You know what I mean. A perfect person encounters a little problem, they pray to God that everything turns out okay, and they're more perfect by the end of the film. It's a heck of a lot easier to hit those magical God tropes in the same old way than to dig deep and break new artistic ground and layer in human meaning and doubt and conflict and suffering. The faith audience, as I've been saying for years and years, is starving and malnourished. This audience was exposed by Gibson 20 years ago when no one saw a religious epic coming. But audiences today want something more than sand, sandals, and saccharin. They want these films to have human relationships they can relate to, suffering, an authentic recognition of the divine that they feel all around them, a supernatural sense of good and evil that only the best artists are capable of summoning. What I fear is that Hollywood will start greenlighting all kinds of schlock based on the successes of just a few films. By the way, the crop of recent films, all these faith-based films you're seeing, they're only around because of the success of Caviezel's Sound of Freedom a few summers ago. When that blockbuster crashed in, Hollywood took notice and started trying to reach that faith audience. It's a worthy pursuit, but unless creators have real belief and an understanding of the sensibilities of that audience, they'll never be able to attract and hold them. Anytime you touch this kind of supernaturally charged material, especially a story based in the scriptures, there is a hard path, a spiritual path that accompanies it. It's a cross for those filmmakers, anybody involved, and a reminder of the tracks you think you're walking in, and a remembrance of what happened to the first guy who got up and told his audience stories or parables that were filled with such truth they struck a nerve and rattled consciences. It ain't for the faint of heart, but those are the only stories that truly change lives and the world, as you'll hear from Jim Caviezel. What in your life helped you connect to the suffering of Jesus?
What in my life?
Yeah. I mean, we all look to our own lives to connect with these. I mean, when you're an actor, you're looking, when did I go through something that was like this or similar to this? Was there anything like that that you connected with?
Yes. To my core, yes, but it's just not something I want to talk about publicly yet. But I would say that it was during that time that I reached out to God and said, please help me. And he did. And he came in a way where he gave me my purpose. And I ask people, you don't ask for money. Don't ask for power. Don't ask for any of that. Just ask for a purpose. And you may get those things anyway, but when you are a steward of God, much is given, much is expected. That's a huge responsibility.
What did you learn about Jesus in playing him that you didn't know when this started?
I always say I never played him. He played me. Let God play you. He knows you better than you know yourself. He knows the greatest things about you. You know, the gifts that you have many people, they go through their lives. Yeah. They never know that they could have done something. If I had my druthers, well, if I didn't go to the NBA, I wasn't good enough, but I was just saying that if I had gone into West Point, I would have been in Iraq. I would have.
But what did you learn about him when it was done?
Jesus?
The first time. Yeah, that you didn't know before. We always learn things particularly when you play a character. You know people more intimately after you play them than you do, than even a historian does, because you put them in your soul in some ways.
Well, he was with me when I was on the cross. The last, I had this internal locution, and he said, "Am I too close?" And that's when the doctor is putting the stethoscope on my heart. And I was struggling breathing. And I said, "You're not close enough." And I cried when I said that. And this was at the end. And I was blue. My body was, you watch that movie, there's nothing fakery about that. I was blue.
Yeah.
I thought, first the devil comes and he takes away your career, your job, your reputation's ruined, everything. But I thought, man, if I died here, how many pastors or priests say, "What will you say to God, when you're at judgment?" I mean, I tried to play you. I tried.
I hope you liked it.
But that went right up to the electrocution, and I was
the lightning strike.
It was eerie. There was no enjoyment of that process because, boom, I got shot right out of my body. I saw my back. I was not. I mean, if these are my shoulders and this is my head, I was at this angle, not this angle, but this angle, looking at my shoulders. And then I was here, and I'm looking at Jan Michelini walks over, and he brings an umbrella, and I'm looking at his hand. His hand explodes. Sparks fly out of his hands because another one, boom.
He got struck. Both of you got struck.
But this one went boom, and it was like my head imploded and then it exploded. I'm at the end. They had a medic truck. I'm in the back of the medic truck. This is the end of the movie. That's it. I'm in a medic truck and the whole thing, and they're reading my heart and everything, and then eventually, the big surgery I had was, one was at the Stanford, Dr. Patchwalla, but then Dr. Gillenoff and Dr. Griffin at Cleveland Clinic saved my life. And
2 heart surgeries.
Yes, and a full-on open heart. And I came out of surgery. I had the tubes, and you're like, it's rough because you can't talk, and you got all these tubes in your throat and everything, and all of a sudden, boom! It's like someone took an egg and cracked it on the lower right side. Oof. I died right there.
Nama jest Nicole. Daudi.
And everything from that was put the Eucharist next to the camera. So I went during the Last Supper. If you look in my eyes, you'll see a camera and you'll see a Catholic priest, Fulco, sitting next to exposing the host.
And how are you preparing now for this resurrection? I mean, a return 20 years later to this world. That really branded and marked your career.
So I'm 57 or 56, I don't know.
56.
65, I don't know, 74.
No, you're not.
But what's crazy about it is just be the best you can at the age you're at, But it hurts a lot more. It's physically a lot harder, the joints, that all the years.
The good news is you don't have the beating, the scourging, the cross. You don't have all of that in this movie.
But there's a lot of wisdom left there. And it's where he needed me to be, or he would have done it earlier. He'd have done it right after the Passion. He would have said, let's do it. But there were probably, I'm also, when you're 33 years old, you think you're going to be 33 forever, right? You always be this way, or always be, I don't know why, but there's something there that I'm the controller of my destiny and you're not, and I don't control time. And I think that had to be wiped away from me. It's a gift, time. We have no control over it. I was just reading C.S. Lewis today, and the Screw Tape, Big Demons, talking to Wormwood, and he says those humans, they think they have control of 24 hours a day. What a bunch of idiots, until the end, and it's over. And that's where they go, no, he's mine. I don't want it to get to that.
So maybe that's what Jesus taught you. You're not in command. And the enormity of the physical suffering
I shouldn't be
you
here.
only tasted a bit of.
Well, of course, but it was enough to kill me. It was enough to kill me. I mean, my heart shut off. The doctors ran into the room, and I watched them. I was out of body experience. I watched the whole thing. I told them, I watched all of you when you were in the room when I was dead. And they, not all of them believe the way we believe, but they were like, I could tell them everybody, I told them what they were doing in the room. I watched it, and I felt the most peace, and I felt the most love, and then they brought me back, and then I felt the most pain.
Yeah, then you got the most pain again. Then you're back, full circle moment. Look, we're coming up on Holy Week. This is Holy Week, when everybody spends a moment, Christians spend time meditating on the sufferings of Jesus, the Passion. When you look up at a crucifix in a church, what goes through your mind? What do you see?
I remember how I used to look up. Now when I look up, I go into him and I look out all the time.
What does that mean?
Because it takes me back to my perspective on the Passion. So the gift I have is looking from our Lord's perspective, not mine. I start from my perspective, And then I go up into him and I look out and I feel what he feels.
Which is what?
People that don't love him. And I think that's the key. I wanted for people to have an experience that they would know Jesus from watching a movie. And I would say to him, why not you come through me? And I begged him over and over again, will you come through me? Will you present yourself to the world? I saw a vision of Jesus. It was silhouetted, but I could see him, and he was sitting, Indian style, and he was very sad. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, it is not a requirement of you as a Catholic to do this movie. And I said, good, I won't, get somebody else. And he says, I don't have anybody else. And he was so sad when he said it. And I said, why? He says, they won't ask me what you'll ask me. What am I going to ask you? He wouldn't tell me. So when I got my shoulder dislocated, I went down, bit through my tongue, looked over to Mary. When I was down, I said, I was in such pain. And I said, I don't want them to see me. I only want them to see you. And then I turned to Mary and I said, Aluemi, behold mother, Khoda Khadesh. Completely different scene. All the other takes, and that was bit through my tongue. And I just said, this was a fight from the get-go, from
Behold, mother, I make all things
behold, Aluemi, Khoda Khadesh, I make all things new. And that take, my shoulder was out, and I was like, everything I had. But I didn't make that face. I just went into this, oh my God, this hurts me. And my arm went over, and Mel said it was like a precious child. I was in excruciating pain to put my arm over it. I was trying to find a better position. And none of the other takes were like that.
Wow.
So I said, okay, whatever it takes. If it comes through that, the greatest things in life come through these horrible pains that you have, and if you just hang in there.
And you're ready to go back down that path again.
I don't see it the same way. It's a purpose. The book, The Purpose-Driven Life. That's what that summation of that book is the saints.
Yeah, the lives of the saints and their wisdom.
Isn't that the treasure, though? That's what I could have asked him for anything, but I wanted a purpose.
What's different this time for you in your mind? I mean, obviously, you're not the suffering Jesus this time out. This is the resurrected Jesus. How do you approach that?
I read about it today in the Screw Tape Letters, doing this recording.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the future. The past is dead. It's locked. The light coming through, the divine light coming through in the present moment. Now, we know of eternity, that's coming someday. But it's staying in this moment. It's hard to do when you do that. You know that one's coming, and I know the day of reckoning is coming to do that film, but I'm not, he's already putting the devil's already doing what he has to do to me right now. Now there's this protection there, but there's enough to where my coach, God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and all of heaven is already guiding this right now. And
so you're not worried?
Of course I am.
Yeah.
That will never, but I was worried on the last one.
Yeah.
Did I fail? I will fail if I get too far out over my skis. I have to really, really, really stay in this moment.
As we anticipate the resurrection, I was surprised.
I want to enjoy this one more than I did the other one.
Oh.
I got too far over my skis on the other one. I was concerned that it was not in Aramaic. You know, I said, we're not doing this in Aramaic. Well, that was a different world. But trust, I really do trust what Mel has. Just because I don't do it in Aramaic doesn't mean Jesus goes away. Through the sacraments I won't do it without the sacraments. And that's everything. Every day is the sacraments.
But I love that. I've never heard you say that before. I'm looking forward to enjoying this one more.
Yes. Yeah.
So really experiencing the resurrection.
Because you're not going to get this many shots. I'm never going to get another shot at this again.
No.
And I remember somebody telling me, you should take a journal. I said, my journal is right here. I remember it all. But I wish I had, documented some of the stuff that I went through that,
Well, now you get another chance.
Yeah.
Tell me about 0 AD. You're playing King Herod.
Yeah.
You're in prosthetics for this role.
Yeah, it was 4 or 5 hours every day.
And that was the key to it.
Oh, yeah.
You saw yourself and that was it.
Yeah. I knew he was Aramaic, and they were like, well, he's kind of, I said, no, this is how because they were doing that freaking accent that I don't know. And I was like, look, nobody here can do Aramaic. Like,
I can do Aramaic.
Well, but I know how to do it. And I said, this is an Aramaic tone. Okay. And he said, well, he's got this, that. I said, yeah, because he would be meeting with this king over here from Egypt, from all these other areas. So he wouldn't sound like any of these guys from a local town. He would be a king. And when I first started, I was, Richard Harris was a great athlete.
Yeah.
Okay. And Brando was a great, very athletic. Russell Crowe, very athletic. And I said, I think that, this guy was Herod was a great athlete. And then what sin does to you, it distorts you, it destroys you. And I love history. I love the stories of, what made those people change. And what the devil had planned, this guy was going to stop it at all cost. Nobody's going to get through this guy. And what they did on Bethlehem was nothing short of pure genocide like the Nazis. It was well orchestrated, well done.
Yep.
And he saw to it to make sure it was done. And where he was, I think he was like the head guy in Galilee. And he'd done such a great job with the shipping and the money.
He's at the port.
His family was like, you're moving. He was on a fast track. Yep. Now his father was murdered, taken out by a faction, and he moved fast. And he's removed all of these, and he ended up.
And he was a great builder. They didn't call him Herod the Great for nothing.
That's right. He returned. It was putting it back to its all glory. So he understood the people and what would keep him in power, and also the factions of individuals. Why those other kingdoms and areas, Masada, had to be built for him to protect him.
What were they? They were fortresses that he could run to if he needed to escape.
That's exactly right.
Spaced out.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yep.
Okay. I've got to ask you my Arroyo Grande questions that I ask everybody. You ready?
Sure.
These are rapid fire.
I'm not good at that.
You will be. Who's the person you most admire?
My wife.
Why?
She's my life. Pillar. It's not even up to think about that. See, that was a bad question for you to ask.
I'm starting easy.
I'm not good at these.
Who's the person you most despise?
I've forgiven him.
Another good answer. What is your best feature?
Feature?
Yeah.
Passion. Passion Christ. Yeah, I thought feature.
No, not feature film. Being a smart ass. What's your best feature as a person, as an actor?
As a feature?
It can be anything. It could be a quality. It could be a physical trait. What's your best feature?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
You know what people would say? Your eyes.
They're older.
But that's probably what they would say is your best feature.
But they're smiling.
It depends on if you're the guy you just forgave or not, I guess.
Irish eyes are smiling.
Okay.
You know how it goes. Well, they must be up to something.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay. What do you fear?
Well, the first thing is Resurrection, the film.
Sure.
Greatest fear.
Really?
Oh yeah. Anything could go on that. Well, you got to remember though, was born to do so. But greatest fear, I worry. My children, my family. I'm a good husband. Good father. I'm not the best father I want to be. I'm not the best husband I want to be. Those are other things. But I do love them deeply.
What is the thing you know that no one else knows?
I've heard other actors say it before. You know, you're going to fail. You know, it might be a gift that you have, but you're always concerned about that. I just outwork everybody. I think that's a big thing, is I have to outwork them, and then the gift takes over from there.
What's your favorite book?
The one I'm doing right now is Screw Tape Letters. It's the one I'm into.
It's a lot of fun.
Well,
it's a fun book, and it's very wise.
Well, it's very wise, but it's getting me ready for the resurrection.
Really?
Yeah.
How?
I'm really studying it. So I'm breaking it apart and going through it and getting into the thoughts of evil, you know, the antithesis of what I'm going to be playing. And there's something, how Jesus works is so simple. There's a reason why I'm doing it, and it's during Lent.
Yeah.
So I'm fasting. So even though you and I are going to go to a nice restaurant after this, I'm not going to have any wine.
Oh, okay. Well,
I gave it up.
Then maybe we won't be going to dinner. What is your biggest regret?
I don't really have any.
You don't have a professional regret?
No.
A role you should have taken?
No, because there were reasons for it at the time. They worked out, but it wasn't for me. You know.
No regrets?
I would have had a major regret if I had not married my wife. That would have been, and that almost happened. You know, I threw it away, but my soul was enough pointed in the right direction where something from above said, you know, gave me a bit of a broken heart and said, she was in the plan for you.
Get back there, dummy.
And I did.
What's the best piece of advice you ever got?
I was talking to this old priest, and he says, Jim, don't start any new addictions. And so I never did.
Well, that's a good piece of advice. What about the old addictions, though?
They're there, but don't add on to them.
Don't add on to them.
Well, because, you know, you think about it, like some people get into drugs and they go, just one time. But if I think you measure that and you go, what if I become so addicted to it? How's that going to change my life? Well, just look at the people that they couldn't get rid of it. I was working on a movie called Pay It Forward. Yeah. And I went down to First Avenue, and I was with the people that were heroin addictions, and they're all going to die. And the man that was working with me he looked like he was in a concentration camp. Yeah. He was skin and bone. And he was teaching me how to put the tourniquet on and how it looks, and I watched all of them. But I hear people talking about it all the time when they say, this is a pay it forward program, or we're going to pay it forward. And I went, I was in that movie. I played a heroin addict, and I think of that guy. Yeah. And so I always pray for him.
When this is over, what happens?
Again, now I'm thinking way too far out. I want to enjoy the process. I'm so happy that my children get to see, you know, their father at work, but it's a continual thing. I'm not going to play Jesus. I need him to play me. It's the only way that this thing is going to work.
But what happens when this is over?
When this is over?
Yeah.
Who knows? If I'm still an actor, you know, if I can't get a job, just be a dad and be a husband, maybe play a little golf.
We're going to go out to dinner. Yeah. That's what happens when this is over. Thank you, Jim. Here's the whole, what you and I can take from Jim Caviezel's path. Two things jumped out at me. The physical discipline he imposes on himself, and the spiritual discipline which he credits for his greatest performances, no matter what you're doing. The discipline of pushing yourself, maintaining these bodies, the only instruments we really have, and then spending time with God to figure out what he's calling you to and how you get there. Those elements are critical. It's not just for actors playing Jesus. God can play you too. The hardest part, I guess, is the mystery of suffering that Jim has certainly tasted and that we all experience when striving to do great things. The hardship at times redirects and deepens our work, I think, for the better. It certainly purifies your intentions, and maybe that's why it's there in the first place. I also like that he didn't pray for things, but for purpose. That is fantastic advice. Thank you for spending time with us. I hope you'll come back to Arroyo Grande soon. Why live a dry, constricted trickle of a life when if you fill it with good things, it can flow into a broad, thriving Arroyo Grande? Thanks for being with us. I'm Raymond Arroyo. Happy Easter, and make sure to subscribe and like this episode. Thanks for diving in. We'll see you next time. Arroyo Grande is produced in partnership with iHeart Podcasts and is available on YouTube, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcasts.